Thank you for joining us for Turn the Page with Paige, sponsored by the Goddard School. This is where we uncover the story behind the bedtime stories that your children are enjoying. I'm your host, Paige Holsey, and we're joining you from our studio in St. Louis, Missouri, which is a pretty weird and wonderful place. In fact, that is the entire premise of a new book, Missouri Weird and Wonderful, written by Amanda Doyle and illustrated by Dan Zettwoch. The fact-filled, fast-paced book takes a look at our state with a kid's eye point of view. Amanda and Dan join us today in studio. Thank you both so much for being here.
Hi, Paige.
This book is packed. How did you decide what to include?
Oh boy. Well, we had the parameter of the state of Missouri. So we had borders and we really did make an effort to cover the entire state. And then it has loosely organized chapters in it. So we have history and wildlife and famous people. Things like that kind of help give it a shape. But certainly there's 5 times as much not in the book as is in the book because we came across a lot of fun things in our research. So some of it was judgment call and some of it was what Dan really wanted to draw.
Yeah, I love that. And we're going to talk more about that collaboration. You mentioned, though, it covers the entire state of Missouri. It's not only about St. Louis, but I bet there were some fun St. Louis factoids that you found along the way.
Oh, sure. Gosh, do we go on and on about St. Louis? I mean, I feel like that's our next book, maybe, the St. Louis version.
Amanda and I have done so much work in St. Louis and local stuff. Yeah, we could have filled an entire book with that. And, and I even discovered some new things and, in the process that Amanda turned me on to. And, some of my favorite things were little museums around St. Louis that, there's 100 museums in St. Louis, which I love. One of my favorite sort of uncovered gems in the book is down at Jefferson Barracks. There's a little telephone museum that not many people have been to.
I didn't know that.
And it's incredible. Lots of, every telephone you can think of, and also a lot of fun mechanical, how telephones work. Do
you have any favorite gems in the book, Amanda, that kids might especially enjoy?
Oh, I mean, there are so many things that I think kids maybe don't know about Missouri. Mm-hmm. So the first drive-through restaurant in the country was born here outside Springfield. It's called Red's Giant Hamburg. So if you're a fan of the drive-through, you have the sort of Route 66 craze to thank for that. Sliced bread was first created and sold in Missouri.
I didn't know that either.
Outside of
I feel like
Chillicothe.
we should be using that more for our tourism bureau or something.
Yeah, I mean, well, Chillicothe is very proud of it. You have to get there to know it from them. So yeah, so there's lots of just fun little trivia items that hopefully are interesting and also give you a sense of the history of the state.
I also especially love the scavenger hunt. It's at the very end of the book, but it's definitely going to send readers right back, diving through every single page along the way. How did that come about?
If you look at the book, you see my illustrations are very dense and packed with information and lots of little things. And in some ways, it was a way that I wanted, kids to have an opportunity to look at the book a lot of times and read it over and over. So it's a way of pointing out maybe tiny Easter eggs that I had hidden in the drawings that Amanda kind of implied that, you had to search for in the book a little bit more.
And I bet every single time they read it or look through it, you're going to learn something new, or you'll notice a new illustration too.
Can I say every single time I look through it, I notice a new illustration, and I wrote the book. So there's a lot going on in there that you're just like, wait, what is that down there?
Yeah, tell me more about your relationship as the author and the illustrator and how you work together, because this book, it seems like those two roles are so intertwined.
Yeah, it was really fun. We started from the beginning just brainstorming a giant list of things we wanted to include, whether from a visual point of view, from an historical, from just a knowledge or cool things point of view, and made a huge list. And then I wrote first, and then I would send Dan chapters at a time, and he would find connections, rearrange things, draw, kind of send it back to me with what I was amazed at, although I don't know why, because I'm not an illustrator, that's why. I was amazed at what he could show that I could then redo the text to say other things because I didn't need those words anymore because they were there visually. So that was really a cool back and forth, I think.
How long did it take, the process? Because I imagine there was so much collaboration and back and forth, and maybe you tweaked when you got a new idea from each other. How long has this been in the works?
I would say we actually worked pretty quickly on this book. I would say the whole book maybe less than a year.
That is impressive. Yeah, for a book of this quality. Well, I know you guys do a Do You Know Mo trivia game, and people can book it, right? How does that work?
Yeah, so we have an entire game show that's based on the information in the book, and it has buzzers and podiums and a host and wacky hijinks. And it is available for people to have for schools or libraries. There, you can go to moweird.com is the website associated with the book, and find out all that information.
Very fun. All right, Dan, I understand that you moved to St. Louis for college. You now call it home. You've done a lot of St. Louis themed work, and in fact, I read an article where he's quoted, get this is the quote, "I've had to draw toasted ravioli more times in my life than I can count." What's the biggest challenge for you with those St. Louis themes, or maybe finding a new way to draw it or represent it?
That's sort of the challenge. I've done especially a lot of maps of St. Louis. Every possible map you can think of museums of St. Louis, Route 66, breweries of St. Louis. So it's finding a way of finding a fresh perspective and showing things in a new way, which is actually not hard because it changed. You know, things are changing and evolving, and you know, I learn new things. So it's a fun challenge to have this sort of very specific local, focus on things. I really feel like I can get to know it.
It's a very fun style. It's almost like sketch doodling, or like the infographics?
Yeah, I actually have sort of a professional background in information design and infographics, so that like this, information flow and density of information, but in a fun and cartoony way.
That came out a lot in the book, actually, because as I said, I would write, it's like discrete nuggets of information in the book around a certain theme for that chapter. And then when I sent it to Dan, he would arrange them in a way that made it make sense, like showed the connections that I wasn't even necessarily thinking about when I wrote them. And then he put them in an order that it's like, oh, right. And now you can tell this story with pictures as well, and it really flows from one thing to the other. So
I think your talents complement each other, and it made the book fantastic for really both children and adults alike. So speaking of children's books, before we let you go, I want to ask each of you for your recommendation for a children's book from another author.
Well, I brought one.
Oh, look at you.
Because I scanned my bookshelves last night. So A.A. Milne, who was the creator of Winnie the Pooh, was a poet as well. And this is my own childhood book from many millennia ago, called When We Were Very Young. But it's just offbeat kind of poetry that is very British, which I don't know why it appealed to me as a kid growing up in Memphis, Tennessee. But it's like kids getting into trouble and not being understood by adults, and kind of the way that you feel when you're a kid. And I just love it. It made me love poetry, which I don't really know anything about besides what I like. But I read it to my kids still, and I still think it's such a great book.
I love that you still have it, and it's both, you can see well loved and well taken care of.
I'm trying.
I wish I would have brought a copy of my book along, but it's on my son's bookshelf, and it is not as well taken care of, very falling apart. But one of my favorite books growing up was a book called Mike Mulligan and a Steam Shovel by Virginia Lee Burton, which was from the early 20th century, and it's a book about a man and his steam shovel, whose name is Mary Ann. So on the surface, it's sort of a story about technology and machinery and digging giant holes, but it's actually a story about friendship and building community, and beautiful illustrations that I think really inspired me.
And then you've since shared it with your son, proving just how timeless that children's books can be.
Oh, absolutely.
That's why I love
half
them.
the books on our shelves I think are mine from when I was a kid, and I can't get rid of them.
Wonderful. Well, both of you, thank you for your recommendations. Thank you for joining us, and congratulations on Missouri. Weird and Wonderful.
Thank you.
I want to thank you at home as well for joining us today for Turn the Page with Paige, sponsored by the Goddard School. Remember, you can watch all of our episodes anytime on KMOV's website and streaming platforms.